Hello, FinTech enthusiasts. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Georgia FinTech Academy podcast, where today we'll dive into the dynamic world of FinTech and payments. We are exploring a theme that is more relevant than ever today. The theme is resilience. In an industry that is constantly evolving, resilience isn't just a buzzword, it's a vital skill that can make or break your career. I am thrilled to have three remarkable guests with me today: Empress, Roberson, Kmiotek, and Genevieve Dozier. These folks I have come to know over the past few years. Empress as a alumni of the Georgia FinTech Academy, and Kathy and Genevieve as professional leaders in the industry. They have all navigated highs and lows in the fintech and payment space with grace and with grit, which is why I'm really excited to have them here to share personal stories of resilience. Before we jump in, let me set the stage with a powerful quote from Albert Einstein. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. This sentiment perfectly captures the spirit of the conversation today, as we discuss how challenges in the fintech industry can be transformed into stepping stones for growth and innovation. So whether you're a student just starting your journey on the seasoned professional looking for inspiration, this episode will be packed with insights and advice to help you navigate and build resilience in your career. Let's get started.
Hi everyone, my name is Empress Roberson. I'm a UGA and Georgia FinTech Academy alum, and I'm so excited to chat with you guys today.
I'm Kmiotek. I'm a fintech and payments marketer. Recently started my own consulting, Kmiotek Advisors and Consulting, and have been in the space for a little over 7 years, and a 20 plus year marketer across different industries. I'm excited to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Genevieve Dozier. I hail from North Carolina. I went to Meredith College in Raleigh, North Carolina, all women's college, and I actually double majored in business and fashion design. Spent a summer in Paris studying fashion design, but ended up interviewing on campus with a bank and went to work for them within their leadership development program, where they recruited college graduates to learn everything about the bank. I ended up going right into merchant services, so that's enabling businesses to accept credit cards, and have been in that industry almost 19 years now. I've been in product roles, marketing roles, sales support, biz dev. I joke that I've done pretty much everything except risk and compliance in the business world. So I've worked at multiple companies, been vice president, I've been C-suite, so chief business development officer at a fintech startup, but big companies, 30,000 plus people, small companies, 10 people. Like Kathy, I also own my own consulting company where I do writing, consulting, contracting, and paid professional speaking as well. So lots on the journey, and look forward to sharing some of it with you today.
Perfect. Thank you for being here. So excited to have Empress. Empress is going to help kind of gauge the conversation and kind of keep the conversation in line with our audiences. We will have students, we'll have industry professionals, obviously also listening in. But I'm really excited to have Kathy and Genevieve on the call today. As you've heard, they have such a diverse background in regards to the scope that they've had and the experiences that they've had. I know both of them quite well over the years as women who are also spearheading efforts to help advocate and promote diversity in the industry as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about that later. But I think in regards to resiliency, we've seen so many different examples of how folks are demonstrating resiliency as of late with a lot of the changes that are happening in the industry. You know, folks navigating career moves and changes. Some folks who are, coming out of the university level and experiencing the industry for the first time. And so I think it's a very relevant topic for our community to start off the new year in 2025, talking about resiliency. And so I want to at least first have a conversation about what is resiliency to each of you, and what is your experience demonstrating resiliency in your history, navigating this environment or this industry. I'll start off with Kathy. What does resiliency mean to you?
You know what? I'm actually going to start with a quote that has really stuck with me over the last couple of years. It's a quote that I picked up on as I was flying to Las Vegas to be part of Rise Up. And it's from In the Heights. So, what I did not lead off with is that I am from New York City. I am a New York City native, and I went to public school my entire life, including my undergraduate degree. My graduate degree is from a private institution from NYU, but my undergraduate is from Hunter College, the City University of New York system. And so this quote comes from In the Heights. I am a city girl, right? Lin-Manuel Miranda's from New York City. I watched it on my way into Vegas, and it hit me. So it hit home on so many levels, right? I'm Latina. I know what they're talking about and certain references that they have in that movie. But there was one quote that in particular struck me, and it was Nina's father. So Nina is a character in the movie. She had been to Stanford. She came back. She's kind of going through imposter syndrome, right? Having gone through imposter syndrome at Stanford. And her father, Kevin Rosario, is sort of a, first gen, right, entrepreneur, owns his own taxi cab service in the city. And she finally admits to him, like, hey, I don't know if I want to go back to Stanford. Like, that's why I've been kind of holding you off on paying, etc. And she expresses some of this imposter syndrome to her father. And he gives her the best quote. He says to her, and this is around representation and being there. You take all the bruises, but you stay in the ring, right? Like that is resilience. We're going to get bruised up just in all facets of life, not just work, all facets of life. We're going to get bruised up. We're going to fall and fail. We're going to have to get up. But you know what? It's staying in the ring. It's staying true to who you are. It's being in the conversation, even when you feel like you shouldn't be there. It's taking all the bruises, but staying in the ring.
Yeah, I love that illustration. Just visualizing it relates to me as an athlete, a former athlete, I should say, because I obviously haven't played anything in quite some time. But just thinking about my collegiate sports period, and they say you build tougher skin, right? Like you put yourself in those environments and you adopt or adapt and make changes and adjustments. But I love that illustration, Kathy, and I've watched that movie a couple of times on a plane as well. Very inspirational. Genevieve, what about you? What is your definition, or what defines resiliency for you?
Yeah, no, so I think a lot of times, and I'm glad we're doing this because I think back to my college days and I don't remember ever having speakers come in to kind of prepare me. It was just more, hey, you graduate college, you make sure you have a job, right? And you go to work. And so I like Kathy had a quote that says the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but rising every time we fall. So I feel like people don't prepare you enough when you're younger for the times you're going to fall. And I talk about my kids a lot because becoming a mom, I didn't really understand until I did. It was like it just creates you to be a different person, right? So I talk about my kids a lot. And kind of like Kathy's, I was my first time speaking at an event in Vegas as well. And the week prior, my daughter, and I want to say, I mean, she was early elementary school. So let's just say she was 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that. And she had an incident on the playground that day at school. And the nurse called me and said, hey, Camilla fell on the playground, but she's fine. And I'm like, okay. So I go to pick her up and she has this huge, it's like bleeding, like almost like a rug burn, but like on her face where she fell off the slide and hit the mulch. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And she's funny because she normally would wear her hair in a ponytail because she just wanted it back out of her way, out of her face at school. And so that next morning I said, hey, do you want to wear your hair down? Because if you wear your hair down, it would cover up, that scar there. And she said, no, mommy, I don't want to cover it up. I want everyone to see how brave I am. And that hit me hard, to your point, Kathy, of almost trying to, I think as we grow up, we become less like a child, right? Because of our learned experience, we're told how you're supposed to act, right? What you're supposed to do and say. And I think trying to think more like a child has actually given me a better perspective as I've gotten older, to be more like, hey, let me tell people, right, what has happened to me and how I've recovered from it, to show how strong I've been and how strong they could potentially be as well.
Yeah, wear it with as a badge of honor, to say the term. That's interesting. Empress, what about you? As you've seen what the challenges students are navigating, and with your recent experience as well, what do you feel like defines resiliency?
Yeah, those are both the good examples Kathy and Genevieve gave are both great. Not giving up, as well as being able to own up to the hardship that you've been able to and you've endured and be able to help others through. But my definition of resilience would really go back to the saying of you bend and you don't break, right? So a lot of things will test you, especially my generation. We've been tested through COVID, through the recent uncertainties within our society. You know what I mean? We've definitely been tested, but just being able to take in the ebbs and the flows and not break and not be willing to give up, like Kathy said, like you stay in that ring. I think my generation has had a lot of experience with that. And we're so thankful to those that have come before us that can show us the way. You know what I mean? And we can learn from other experiences, but also learn how to get back up. You know what I mean? I think these experiences that we are experiencing now will set us up for a lot of success in the future.
Yeah, that's really good, Chris. I think for, the folks that have gone through just the pandemic and industry challenges and changes and thinking about, the adaptability of that we've been forced to participate in. It's been an interesting time seeing people kind of come out of that, and they come out of that stronger in many instances. I can name many examples of people who are doing bigger, better things than they were doing before because they were kind of forced to pivot during that. So I'm glad you highlighted those life kind of changes that have impacted us just based on the timeline. Kathy, we want to talk about kind of just examples of resiliency. And I know you've been through so many different changes in your career and you've experienced so much. So do you have any examples that you could highlight of where you have demonstrated or have had to demonstrate resiliency in your career?
Oh gosh. I feel like there's so many paths to our journey, right? And each one of them takes us into a different and new experience. And it also takes you sort of to that next level of resilience. So similar to Genevieve had mentioned, I wish in my younger college days that I had this. I love, by the way, that the FinTech Academy exists. You know, I'm a super fan of it. There are so many people that fall into their careers, and similarly I did. I kind of stumbled into this marketing path, really growing up in marketing, on the publishing and media side, and consistently challenging myself there, but always feeling like it needed to be about working very hard and not necessarily talking about what I was working on, just doing. And so as I've gone through my career, some of that resilience has been talking about myself, which is one of the hardest things that I really, really find
Yep.
to do, to introduce myself, to talk about myself, to speak about what my failures are as well as what my wins are. And so that channels through into your career overall, into the resilience that you start to build, and that staying in the ring, learning new things, taking those bruises and kind of, shuffling your feet a little bit differently, reacting to things a little bit differently. Recently I left sort of the W-2 world, and not by my own will, which was the first time for me ever. So taking that hit and saying, okay, well, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? Taking a chance and starting something different. Getting a little bit uncomfortable. Resilience is also introspection, right? What am I doing? What is going on? How do I want to address this? How do I feel about this? What can I learn? Who can I reach out to? So resilience, going through some of those challenges, which you will, right? I can guarantee in everyone's career that you will change paths. You will change what you do within a certain industry or across industries. And you will have to pick yourself up. And it is that picking yourself up, but not being afraid of it, not being afraid of the fall, because the rise is so much better. You may need to hold on to something. You may need to kind of struggle and wobble through it, but you will get up, right? And so just from a career standpoint, the changes that I've gone over the last 7 years within the payments industry. I mean, it just payments and fintech, just get ready. It changes daily. When you think you know something, it changed.
Yeah.
There's this expansion and compression that happens with it. I kind of joined at a time when things were shifting and changing even more than they probably have, and then COVID comes and it accelerates everything even more. And talk about COVID, right? Like, how does that change not only your career but your perspective on life, livelihood, where your time is spent? Interestingly enough, sometimes right now I feel like there's a reversion back to less empathy, back to sort of what 2019 or early 2020 versus where we were kind of a little bit post COVID. So I think there's a collective sort of reckoning that's happening, and so we'll see where we net out now. But it's a journey of resilience in an ever changing space that is trying to demonstrate resilience itself, right? From even defining what is payments, what is payment technology, what it falls under the fintech umbrella. How do you differentiate yourself as a quote unquote fintech? Do you call yourself pay tech? Do you call yourself health tech? Are you reg tech? All of them fall loosely under the fintech environment. So resilience from an industry perspective, as someone having a career within that industry, and then as someone looking to explore a career within that industry, which, by the way, from a FinTech Academy perspective, is amazing. Again, didn't exist. Most or many people you will meet didn't intentionally say, I want to be in fintech, or I want to be in payments, or I want to be in banking. A lot of people, to Genevieve's point, you kind of go to college, you graduate, and you're like, okay, go get a job, and you kind of land somewhere and in a career path and in an industry.
Yep. Yep. Oh man, wait, Kathy, I need to use you for our marketing for the FinTech Academy. But yes, honestly, it's funny listening to you describing resiliency through the lens of your personal experience relates so much to the reason why I'm here at the FinTech Academy myself and personally. And it was driven by the pandemic, driven by you mentioned kind of the psychological changes I think that have come out of going through, such a transformative time for not only the industry but for the world. And for me, I had, some reflection on my career and what I really wanted for myself. I feel like I did some of the things that you mentioned. I had to learn how to become my own PR, speak about myself, promote myself internally, trying to navigate and achieve promotion amongst the ranks. And then I had to look at what my career path and my vision board was for my career. It also was influenced by some outside factors, but it propelled me into the space where I really wanted to focus on something that aligned with my purpose and was a mission that I really could stand behind. And so for the FinTech Academy, it meant I can now marry the two pieces very well, which was I am very passionate about fintech. I love to have my hands on things that really contribute to innovation, but then I also can give back and help others with their career. So it happened to be the perfect blend. But I love that you highlighted a lot of different things that I think people can apply to their lives, whether or not they're, new to the industry or experienced professionals, which is to kind of keep in mind some of those elements that you're talking about in advocating for yourself and for being able to present and leverage those failures as contributors towards future success, the learnings that come from that. And people always talk about, I've seen many panels in the industry where people talk about how those, failures are sometimes even more valuable than the wins because you come out even better on the other side.
Gosh, yeah. It's so true. And you so many of us, and I find this maybe in particular amongst women, but certainly amongst underrepresented groups, and I would say that applies to some of the men in underrepresented groups as well, is that there's almost this feeling of not we should not fail. We cannot fail, right? It starts to become this narrative of failure as a bad thing. And I know that that's something that right, like I even still work through, right? Failure as not seen as a moment to rise, but seen as a moment to, like, you're down, focusing on the down versus the up. But also the sensation of, oh my God, I cannot fail. I cannot fail. Failure is bad. And that's not true. That is not true. Failure is a moment. Failure is learning. I have two boys, and something that I try to tell them, you learn more from your failure. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to don't be afraid to be afraid, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many moments over the course of my career that I've been absolutely frightened to take certain steps because I was afraid to fail and let failure move my decisioning
Yeah.
versus, okay, yes, I may fail, but let me go anyway. And so that's the thing that I would highlight the most to any young person coming up. Just don't be afraid of the fail. Don't be afraid of that fail. It will come, but don't be scared of it.
Genevieve, we're, along the same lines, around examples, demonstrating resiliency and what you've encountered and seen from your perspective. I know that I've seen you speaking to other women and other forums in the industry talking about professional development and how you can conquer and achieve success in the industry. But flipping it on the other side, how have, you seen, or what examples from a resiliency perspective have you seen and experienced in your history? In your past?
Yeah, so it's speaking from personal perspective, and I love what Kathy mentioned. I've actually eliminated failure and success from my vocabulary because, to your point, it's so broad and it's such a moving target. It's like, what is success, right? What is failure? So I kind of more define it as, just to play off of what Kathy was saying, is you tried something and it didn't work out as expected or as planned, right? Or maybe you tried something and it worked out great, right? And it's all, like, to everyone's point here, it's all about the learning of it. I love a quote: it matters not what road you take, but what you become, right, on the journey. So that's what I talk about a lot, my career journey. So I do love, again, just want to echo, I think about this as like, when I was pregnant, I read What to Expect When You're Expecting, right? So this is kind of like the college guidebook to navigating corporate America, maybe specifically fintech. Of course, we're coming from a female perspective. I also, when I won one of my first industry awards, I talked about coming from a small town girl, not coming from wealth, coming to the industry with no connections, not even knowing what a VCPE, like all these acronyms, investment firms. I didn't even know what Wall Street was. I didn't even watch movies. My mom was a teacher assistant. My dad worked for the naval base for the government. I worked with the military. It's like, I just didn't know. I wasn't exposed to it. And probably some of, my advice there is just, leverage what you learn in college, because that can really help you in your career. Having referenceable experience has helped me a lot. I did a study abroad in Europe, and then I've ended up, working with people internationally. And so we've kind of had that in common. So it's like when you kind of come from where you don't feel like you belong, kind of finding and creating commonalities that can help you grow your network in your career. But let's see. So I'll reference some things, Laura, you asked. Yeah, often we talk about, right, here's all the great things I've done, but here's like what's maybe not been so great. And again, I think it goes back to potentially what to expect in a fintech payments job, right? I did get a promotion, and then there was a time where I got passed over for a promotion. And it was by someone who was younger than me. I didn't feel like they had as much experience. They had never been a people leader, and I had. But what I've learned, again, 19 years in, I've also grown in confidence over those 19 years, right? Speaking to a college student, is that rejection is redirection. And I owe this to one of my good friends. She keeps reminding me, if it passes by you, it wasn't meant for you. And it's tough when it's something like, hey, I really think I want this, and you don't get it. And you're like, where do I go next? What I also, would say in my journey personally, I've really set goals, I've created a plan, and then I've achieved it. Or maybe I didn't. And then maybe I changed my strategy, right? And then maybe I still didn't get it. And I think there comes a point where it's like, okay, well, maybe this isn't meant for me, or maybe it's just having patience. Because then, maybe 5 years down the road, it finally happens, right? Whatever it was that your goal is. So I think with personal, it's a little bit different than business resiliency when you talk about actually, industry challenges, market changes, things like that. Those need to happen swift. Where I think in your personal life with the resilience, it's about patience. Again, separation. You could choose that you don't want to work for a company anymore. They could choose they don't want you to work for that company anymore, right? Those are things that can happen in the industry. There could be mass layoffs, or again, you just decide maybe, hey, this isn't really like what I wanted. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and maybe you're like, I'm gonna take a step back, and I'm gonna go see what else is out there for me. So I think actually having a plan. You talk about resiliency plans in business. What happens if there's a disaster, an incident? But you need to kind of have that for your personal life as well. And that was something no one really prepared me for. And then just real quick, kind of on the medical side, I was very lucky to not have any medical issues, as a youth, like in growing up and in college. And it wasn't until recently, and I just turned 40. I still feel 21. I'm still rocking and partying like I was in college. No, but on a serious note, I think, paying attention to your body, and when you do have medical things coming up, putting it first over work. Because I know I delayed having a surgery that I needed because of work. And looking back on it, I wish I wouldn't have, because your health is 100% like needs to come first. And I would say just with that, just being your own, I think what's gotten me through a lot of challenges, Laura, in my career is being my own hype person. I've learned, in recent years that the most important voice is the voice in your own head. So what are you telling yourself, right? And that's kind of giving yourself grace. I think with things that happen, whether it was in your control or out of your control, you can't change the past, but you can reflect on it. Reflection being key to learning. I always look at I try not to regret anything, because it's play like that whole time machine scenario. But I think just looking at the past with the lens of you made the best decision at the time you made it with the information you had, and that was it. Definitely you could analyze it, but I would look at it more from the lens of what could you do differently in the future potentially, and what good came from the situation. So I always try to look at it with that positive lens to help with that kind of growth mindset.
Yep. Bruce, I see you nodding, and I feel like a lot of this is resonating with you. What do you think, as far as, thinking about folks that are, either early career, early talent level student? How does some of what they're talking about resonate with you?
Yes, both Kathy and Genevieve made some great points about resiliency. One thing that really resonated with me heavily was that piece about introspection, and really about just taking the things that you're doing. And sometimes we have a tendency to, like, once we do something difficult, we check it off. We're like, oh, well, yay, now I get the job, now I get the grade, now I get this opportunity. And sometimes it doesn't always work like that, and you have to kind of practice, like, reflecting on your experiences and, like, what did I learn from this, what could I have done better, you know what I mean? And not being afraid to talk about difficult things you've been through, whether that has been a success, and that's something like you can brag about, or it's been not so successful and it's something you can learn from. So throughout my college career, whether that's been like difficult courses or being not selected for an internship, I think those things you kind of have to take in stride, and you have to make sure that you're not just letting it pass by you, that you're really thinking about the hard stuff and kind of just reflecting and making sure that you're getting the important bits of that. You know what I mean? So that's really great points they made there.
Yeah, those learnings are invaluable. I love when people flip the script and they take those failures and leverage it. I know I've
Yes.
seen people now posting on social media about some of those, like, I didn't get this
Mhm.
interview, but this is what I learned. Or, I had this, unfortunate situation where I failed this particular, test, but hey, these are some things that I feel like can help the community or help my peers and help others. So there's a lot of people that are
Right.
taking kind of some of these failures and turning it to good, and coming out
Yeah.
more successful and thriving. So I love to see that.
And
Thinking
I just want
about
to add,
yeah, go ahead.
it's okay to feel the moment of the failure too,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's okay. It's not all, it's right. You're going to look for the rise, and you're going to move in towards that rise. but it's okay to sit with it, right? Like we don't give ourselves permission to feel the things that we should. It is a process. It is a processing, right? It is a step by step that you go through. And so that's when you lean also then on the community that you're building around you. And so something to say to that is that, right, Laura and Genevieve are part of my community, and I know I can lean on them at any given time. And that's the advice that I would also have loved to have known when I was in college, is that building of the community, that building of those people that you trust, those people that will tell you the truth about yourself, right? Because sometimes, you need to be told the truth about yourself. Especially because it's very hard for us to sometimes, when we're in our own fields, to really think through things clearly. And the truth about yourself can be positive and can be negative. And so it's embracing those moments of feeling the failure as well, right? You're allowed to feel like, oh crap, this sucks,
Man.
right? The same way
Mm-hmm.
you're allowed to feel like, okay, I'm going to go get this, right? Like they work off of each other.
Yeah.
And you need
Yeah.
your network. You need those people to be in your corner in the positive, and in not, I don't even want to call it negative, but in the real way.
Yeah, the real way. Because real doesn't look beautiful and, prosperous all the time. There's some,
Mm-hmm.
bumps and some kinks in there too. When you were saying that, I couldn't help but reflect on the first time I got laid off. I was at Bank of America, which by the way, I had a reorg in the 3 years I was there. I had a reorg every 6 months. I was constantly moving. I couldn't even figure out where I was going to be. And I honestly thought every single person that I worked with from a leadership perspective were, Nations Bank. They've been at Bank of America for quite some time. And I thought I was going to retire there. When I got laid off, they were like, hey, it's just unfortunate. This is business. And I'm thinking, my life is over. Yeah, like I am not a crier, guys. Like I literally was like in tears, went home. My manager, who unfortunately this decision was out of her hands, even because it was kind of a forced reduction, but took me out to dinner with my team. I had such a community that instantly gathered around me. And then I had that immediate community of my team that I'm usually together with and huddling with and working with side by side. But then I had my extended network. It was almost like layers of people that I had to tap into. And Kathy, when you were talking about that community, we're always trying to tell students how important it is to build your network. But like both you and Genevieve have such a tremendous network where there's segments of networks. There's networks within networks, you know what I mean? And then we have our core fun group, which I like to say I'm a part of, which I mean we will go to bat for each other in any instance that we can. And so I love to see how, we're using that, and we're leveraging those, those specific groups, to our benefit. But I always try to tell students how important it is to build those relationships.
Definitely.
Genevieve, I feel like you have some thoughts around that too, like just how students can kind of overcome those low moments psychologically. I think I mentioned, being in tears and leaning on my team and just being vulnerable about like, hey, this really sucks right now. Like I hate this and I need a day. You know what I mean? To get through this. And then I'll focus on my go-to, my and feel comfort through that plan. What do you think about
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, it's interesting because I ended up leaving my bank after 10 years for numerous reasons. And I moved my whole family to a different state. We actually moved for a job in Alpharetta, so just north of Atlanta. But we didn't, know anyone there necessarily. I just thought, this is great job opportunity, moved there. And then about 6 weeks in, I realized it wasn't for me. The role was actually a junior level role when I had come from the leader role at the bank, and the culture at the company was, and it wasn't necessarily toward me, but it was toward my peers. And I was like, you can't talk to her that way. You can't talk to him that way. Like, that's horrible, right? And so it just wasn't a good atmosphere. And I did reach out internally to some people I felt like I could trust. To your point of kind of, I feel like in college, they kind of tell you to build relationships with your coworkers. So that's what I had been used to doing. But then when that didn't work, I was like, what do I do? Right. And so that's actually when I first heard of WNet, which is now Paytech Women in Atlanta. They were having their first annual conference, and I went there. My company was actually sponsoring it. They like told me to go, like required me to go. And I'm like, okay, what is this? Walked into a room full of 200 women. I was used to working with mostly men, so I was very intimidated. I had kind of mean girl experiences in high school, so I was not really excited about being in a room full of women. But they were like welcoming, and they were like, hey, how's it going? And to your point, Laura, I just like word vomit. I was like, it's going terrible. I was like, I just moved my whole family. My house has mold. I hate my job. I'm like, I literally every morning, I was like, before I would open my eyes, when I would wake up from sleeping all night, I would literally pray that I would open my eyes and I was still back in my old home, in my old job. Right. To your point, I was like going out on my lunch break at work into my car crying. But you know what? It was like, okay, we got to do this. We got to do something about this. And so I went to a different WNet networking event at a company. It was like a small group, maybe, I don't know, about 30 or so women. And something early on in my career, I actually, my very first manager was a woman, and she was head of product. And I like admired her because I was like, man, she can go into a room and just talk to anyone, right? Working those like social events, and you know what we kind of see as like networking, right? You're good at networking. You're good at like that happy hour social chat. I was terrified. I was like, I walked up to someone I didn't know. I was like, I don't know what to say to you. Hey, how's it going? My name's Genevieve. I count the weather's pretty good, right? Like I didn't know what to say. And so that was my moment to be like, okay, I need to get really good at networking. I was like reading things online. I like forced myself to go to events. That was when I actually created my LinkedIn profile for the first time, because prior to that, and this was 2016, prior to that, it was like LinkedIn was really only used if you were looking for a job. Like you put yourself out on LinkedIn, you're like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Because other than that, like you're at your company. Why would I need to post myself online, right? From in a professional perspective. Times certainly have changed, to your point, Laura. But I was scrolling like LinkedIn, and I saw a former partner, a vendor of ours, was like hiring. And so then that's where I ended up reaching out to him like, hey, I don't know if you know, I left the bank. I'm now here in Georgia. He was in Columbus. He worked for TSYS, and he had just left and went to another company. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually hiring for this job, because he had just shared it on LinkedIn. I didn't know, he didn't say anything about who he was hiring. And he was like, and then he ended up hiring me. But aside from that, though, I mean, I started reaching out to recruiters. Like I was going to these events, and I was just open with people like, hey, here's what's happened to me. I moved, I got this job, I hate it, I want a different job, help me. And that's when kind of doors opened. And so to your point, that's how I started creating community. And then I think it's so key to create community outside of your company, right? Because it's like then when something happens with the company, or maybe you're having issues with a coworker or your boss, you need kind of that external perspective to kind of help guide you. And then if it does come to a place where you need to leave, then you have that. And to Laura's point, I think just within different, and then if you ever need to lean on someone like, hey, I know this, right, real-time payments, FedNow, instant payments, like this thing's coming out, I don't know anything about it, I'm card payment girl, so let me reach out to these people that I met at this event so they can kind of help me learn about it, right? So that would be like a different community to help create kind of resilience in what you're going through. And then I think you need those true, authentic friends, like people, and this is something, even my mother at retirement, she worked 30 years in the school system. She had no idea that as soon as she left that door and retired, she would never talk to those people again. She thought they were ride or die, but they were just coworkers. And so you never know until you leave a company who are your actual friends and who are your coworkers that you'll never talk to again. You only talk to each other because you like work there. And to Laura's point, from industry and from like different networking events, and then actually getting to know each other, I have this huge group of friends that's all over the country, like none of them, and even like in different countries now. And I'm back in my teeny tiny hometown of like 1,000 people. My actual like hometown is like 3,000 people. But it's like I have all these amazing friends that I can call on. We call it our ride at dawn. Like, are we good, or do we need to ride together? Like, do we, and you need that to say like, hey, this is happening, or I just need support, or I'm having a rough day. And so it is crucial to create all those different types of networks and communities like Kathy and Laura both mentioned.
No, that's really good stuff, Genevieve. There's so many gems in that, what you just said. One thing that I felt like really resonates with what I see students encounter is having the bravery to ask. Like, and I don't know, Empress, how you feel about this, but Genevieve, that example that you highlighted about reaching out to someone that you were acquainted with by way of work to ask for something, to say you needed help. And I don't know, Empress, how you feel about that, but I feel like some students are a little bit apprehensive about doing that.
Yeah, I do think there's some hesitation there, but I think that comes to the point of what you're saying, just kind of forcing yourself to, putting yourself out there. I know many times I've had to kind of just pre-schedule events and things like that because I know I need this exercise, I need this practice, you know what I mean? But also just having the bravery and the resilience to repeatedly put yourself out there, knowing that you're not owed a reply, you're not owed an opportunity, but just being like, just having an optimistic mindset and a grateful mindset at the people that do reply and do connect with you. I think that's the most important part. And knowing that it's a two-way street, you know what I mean? Like you're connecting with these people probably with something on your mind, they might have something that they need help with, and you being open to really building a connection and a real relationship with them and not it just being transactional, I think is very important. And just keep doing it, you know what I mean? And come from a place of being really genuine and interested in what they're doing and what they have going on. And I'm sure that you'll get that in return, you know what I mean? But just don't give up and continue putting yourself out there, even online, posting because you never know who it might resonate with, you know what I mean? Just sharing your experiences. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Chris, because I do believe, you know, having those relationships, when you mention it being a two-way street, it's not necessarily just always asking for something, but it's just, kind of offering up a listening ear.
Yeah.
Students that have reached out just, expressing, gratitude or, can I help in any way? And it's not necessarily just like, hey, I'm struggling finding a job. Can you help me? Can you introduce me to all your contacts type.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate those students that, take it that next level. And so I'm sure that would be well received. Good people gravitate towards good people. And in this industry, in the payments and fintech industries, I've seen a lot of people who are willing to help the next generation or, folks who are just eager to learn something. Genevieve also mentioned in, those opportunities to reach out, it's not just reaching out for opportunities and jobs, but it's reaching out for knowledge, and you want to grow and learn different segments. Like that is something that people can really lean into and to help and provide aid in those things as well. So small or large, I think there's opportunities to leverage those networks, and in that, along those same lines, as far as like best practices and some tools for students to think about, what else do you guys have in your minds as far as what students could think about going forward? I will say right now we're in the spring semester. We have, thousands of students who are taking fintech courses right now. We've seen students, in this wave of graduation. I have students who are 6 to 8 months, post graduation, still looking for their dream job, and who have had to, kind of pivot or are kind of struggling to find their way or navigate their way in the industry, which is why I really was excited about having this conversation today. What guidance do you have, or words for encouragement for students who are really just in this place where they're really just trying to figure out how to get in, you know?
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
say I was in a very similar position recently. I graduated May 2024. And so, although I did have experience in the fintech industry and with many different professionals and companies, I did struggle to find my fit in fintech. And so I really had to widen my scope of the types of opportunities I was open to and the people I was networking with. This conversation is perfect because resilience is the word that comes to mind when you're searching and you're just looking for an opportunity. I found a place in sales and in data. And so that I was able to like really find my fit and be able to find a place that I could develop my skills, because sometimes it's not like industry specific and you can limit yourself thinking that you can't learn a skill if it's not a specific company or specific industry. Like things aren't always, it's not always a linear movement. You know what I mean? And so you have to be open to finding those opportunities where you can.
Very good.
Yeah, I would
Genevieve, Kathy.
Yeah, I would say specifically, and it's funny, it's like you leave college, right, and you're like trying to find a job, but then here I am 19 years of my career and I'm currently not working, looking for a job. So it is interesting from the different perspectives, but I mean, I would say some of the key principles are the same is, yeah, applying. Sometimes most of the time that's not enough anymore, unfortunately. So then it's reaching out to your point, Empress, of different connections that you have, maybe that work at that company, or people that know people that know people, right? I mean, however many people it takes you, right? Because you have to get in that door. And sometimes it's really hard to get it open, right? And people need to open it for you. And then you do the work. And I think too, it's knowing that where you go can be temporary. It can be a stepping stone. It doesn't have to be here forever. Much like Laura, I thought I went to BB&T, now Truist, and I thought I was going to work there 30 years and retire, and then it didn't work out that way, and that's fine. But I think that was kind of a more traditional, or like my parents' generation, kind of mindset around working in your job, and now it's not. And it's funny because I mean, there's some people that say like, hey, you shouldn't stay longer than 2 years at one company because it looks better if you worked at Apple and Google and a bank and like all these different places and you have all these different perspectives, right? But I think just keeping that in mind, and if maybe you have some check boxes of like, I want to work remote, or like different check boxes of what you want, but then I would maybe take that a step further and say like, what are you willing to give in? Like what's a non-negotiable? Like I will not sacrifice this, right? And yeah, I think to your point, Empress, being open to all different types of roles, especially starting out. And then like once you do it, like I was in sales, right? And I'm like, oh no, sales is not for me, right? I don't want to be a hunter. Any job description that has hunter in it, I do not want to do. But I didn't learn that till later in my career, right? Actually doing that job and going from zero to hero month over month. But I would say to, yeah, be eager, be hungry. When you get in a role, be this, what the industry calls a SME, or a subject matter expert. Like learn, be the authority, like research, like know your stuff. And then I would say too, to keep track of your credentials. And Laura's probably talked about this, I imagine, but we talk about all the time. But have your elevator pitch, right? Even as a college student, I loved it. Our college had business cards they gave us our senior year, and it was like, future college graduate, right? Had our name and information. So when you went to networking events or interviews, you could hand them like your business card, right? So it's like, contact me. So I thought that was really neat. But I say all that to say, like when I was meeting people, I already had like my credentials, and to make sure that you quantify your achievements, right? Because people want to hear something quick, right? For that elevator ride. So like quick, what have you done? What are you looking for? Right. And I think if you have that pitch nailed down, it's authentic. I love, Empress, you're saying like, be yourself. You even said brag about it. A lot of people in the industry, even later in their careers, have trouble bragging about it. So my advice is always about being proud and not prideful. And that helps people kind of feel more comfortable with bragging. But I love that you said that. I was like, yes, do it.
Yeah.
You should. And then know, have a strong work reputation, I think, once you get into that role, because then know who could be a reference for you for the next role. Like same thing again, I'm 19 years in, and the job I'm applying for right now asks me for references. And so I'm like having to dig, and I haven't had to provide references in a long time. And so I'm like having to dig like, hey, who's in, and a lot of people, I think the fun thing about too, and I will say this is great related to resiliency, is I'm reaching out to people that I thought I had a good relationship, and they're not responding. And so I'm like, okay. Or people are saying like, hey, if you ever need a job, I got you. So I'm reaching out to them like, hey, I need a job. They're nowhere to be found. So I do love that process, because it's like you get to see people's true colors and kind of when you need them, what they, and I will say, so then paying it forward, your point, Laura, that, we all promote diversity in the industry, but we also promote humanity, I think. And so we are all advocates of paying it forward, doing what we say we're going to do, following through and actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah. I had so many thoughts pop up when you were saying that, but the one that sticks the most out to me is that both Kathy and Genevieve, you have introduced me to folks who need something. Do you know what I mean? Like, you guys are both like connectors for people who need various different things, but like helping people is what you do. It's like inbred in who you are individually. So you would hope that, you're paying it forward, it would come back to you in strides. But yeah, that natural kind of just feeling of, how can I give back, how can I help other people, and bring them all along the journey of me seeing my success. We've done this on panel discussions, like large or small. We're talking about things that, I think most of the focus, tends to be on jobs and careers, but, experience and exposure, like all of these other segments as well, require that connectivity and the network and being able to help other people grow and stretch themselves in different ways. So you guys have done a great job at doing that. Kathy, what about you?
So many thoughts were going through my head while Genevieve was speaking, just right now while you were speaking. Your career and your journey is not finite, right? It's not. Your goals are not finite. It shifts and changes over time just in life. But then even in your career, I did not start out in banking, financial services, or in the fintech industry. My journey has taken me through. I worked through college to support myself. I did not go for my master's until I had a full-time job. It's a story of my goals have changed as I've moved into different areas. Curiosity, remain curious. To Genevieve's point, be the SME, learn, pick pick up on the conversations. When I transitioned into payments, I joined Thesis, not in Columbus, in New York. They had just acquired a company called Transfirst out here on Long Island. And I knew really nothing about payments. What I really knew was, and probably not the marketing that they were looking for entirely when I walked in that door. And I didn't certainly know what I was walking into either. So it was a learning experience for all of us all around. But I was curious. How do things connect? How do things work? Fun fact, the connectivity and being hungry is what led me to meet Genevieve, right? Her saying yes to opportunities led me to meet her and then eventually meet her in Atlanta at a PayTech Women Conference, formerly WNET. And, introduce myself, which, by the way, I had really never done. I was a terrible networker. Somewhat, I come off as very extroverted, but I am an ambivert, right? Like there is a level of me that likes my sort of introvert on me time. And when I need to be, I'm present and I'm in that room and I'm going to make the introductions. I'm going to think immediately of who needs to connect with who or what I have heard that I need to be connected. But remain curious. Your journey's not finite. Your opportunities are not finite. The industry is not finite. Take what you learn and move it forward. I just said fintech's kind of going through its, well, what's really a fintech, right? And what are those different areas that fall under that fintech umbrella? Where does payments is vast. And what are those different areas within payments? So understanding the vastness and then maybe where you want to go in and the areas you want to be part of and how they align with you. But curiosity is key, and understanding your goals and what you become curious about will shift and change. Similar to Genevieve, right? I'm in my career about 25 years, so I'm a little older. Shh. And I did not come from this field, but I've remained curious and I've asked questions. Even when I've told, like, some folks believe the marketing function is just go do and do as I want you to do and not as you want. And coming from a background where I truly believe there is a science to marketing. And we are P&L owners alongside so many groups, and our closest ally is not sales but finance. So a different philosophy to certain instances, and standing on that, right? As you go through your journey, learning to stand on what you've learned, where you've been, and what you're curious about in the next step and phase. And so here I am in my next step and phase, right? Again, similar to Genevieve, no longer being under a corporate banner, having started my own advising and consultancy, while also being open to a next role in a company at the same time and what that looks like. But now I know where I've been, what I've brought to the table, what I can bring to the table, and I remain curious because knowing that you know nothing is knowledge, right? Like I'm still learning even at 25 years into my career. And marketing as a discipline has changed and shifted with what's going on in, right? Direct mail is dead. No, it's not. Email has taken over. Not really. Social takes over email. I don't know. AI does everything. Okay, well, how does it help me? Right? You need to continuously challenge yourself. You don't get somewhere without curiosity. Think of it as a roadmap or a map, right? You want to reach a certain destinations, there are various different paths. And so some may be mountainy, some may be beachy, some may be rocky, right? And maybe you start in one and you veer off to another, but you find out different things. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And your personal life and your work life will intersect, right? There is no separation in the sense of you live one life. You are who you are.
It is a journey. I'd rather take the beach than the rocky road.
Yeah.
Personally and professionally, that's my
You
preference. There's so much information shared today. I really appreciate the examples of demonstrating resiliency. I think will resonate with our audience. And then just the gems of things for people to think about going forward as they pursue their careers, or they have to make a pivot in their careers, or they're just trying to be in maintenance mode, because there's a lot of us that can get stagnant and stale and need to think about some of these things that we're talking about today. So really excited about this opportunity to meet with this group. And for our listeners, please look out at our website, georgiafintechacademy.org. If you're a student, connect with us for some of our future events. We have our first kickoff event coming up here in January with FIS. We have some fresh new job opportunities on our job board, which is on our website as well. So please take a look at both of those resources. And then for our broader community, I'm going to be linking these awesome ladies' profiles, LinkedIn profiles at the bottom in our description. So you'll be able to follow and connect with them. They are always posting, even Empress. I've seen you out there on LinkedIn as well. But for Kathy and for Genevieve, I know they're always posting upcoming events, webinars, and then some advice and some thought leadership relevant to this industry and other industries as well. So I think there will be great resources for our community going forward. Thank you all for joining, and we'll look forward to our next podcast from the Georgia FinTech Academy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.